Welcome back. Now, 2 months after the war has ended, the nearly 300,000 or so displaced civilians still remain in massive welfare centres in the north, waiting until it is time for them to return to their lands and their families. The government is working under enormous pressure to ensure that their wait doesn't last much longer. But in the meantime, aid workers have their hands full as they work with the displaced in the camps. I spoke with Mr. Gowthaman of OXFAM Australia about his experience of the ground situation.
Hi Mr. Gowthaman, thanks so much for joining me on the program. To start off with, can I just ask you to give me a brief overview of the IDP issue in Sri Lanka as it stands now?
The IDP situation in the country currently consists of three important groups. The long-term IDPs, the Muslim IDPs, and then of course you have the Eastern IDPs who had been displaced, and almost all of them have been resettled, barring a few. And then of course the biggest and the most pressing one is about the 280,000 odd IDPs from Vanni who were recently displaced and are currently languishing in camps in Vaunia, Trincomalee, Jaffna, and a few in Mannar. So that's the pressing concern now. And
now 2 months on, have things improved in terms of the conditions in the camps?
OXFAMs together are involved in working in water, sanitation and public health and hygiene promotion work in the camps. And what we could say is that over the period of time, the material conditions in the camps have improved. They may not be satisfactory even as at this point in time, but we should also record the fact that they have shown a marginal improvement over a period of time. So if you take toilets, from the dates, from the beginning when we had about 100,000 coming in a day and without a place to have a proper sanitation facility, we have improved, and we are working towards achieving the sphere standard. But still, in some places we have the ratios are 1 toilet to 200. So we are trying to improve in many of the places. So that and the same goes for water too. Drinking water and water for use for bathing and washing and other purposes was a big problem. But that problem seems to have been addressed significantly. Some progress, but from the people's perspective, that still is not good enough. That still needs to improve.
So what more do you think is needed?
If you ask me, and I think and then this problem has been rightly diagnosed by the president himself in his interview with Ram in the Hindu, is that the most essential thing is the freedom of movement. This crisis need not be a crisis if freedom of movement is assured or is given to these people. Then we will see that a fair bit of them would move in with their host families. They are from the north, they are from east, they are from Vaunia, the rest of the country. So we would see a fair bit of movement, if the freedom of movement is assured to them.
So do you think that quite apart from the basic needs of food and water and clothing and medical supplies, do you think freedom of movement is the most pressing concern?
If you have to ask, what are the big structural issues, I would put the freedom of movement first, then family reunification, and the right to information. If you actually walk into the camps, which I have done, and talk to the people, what you see is uncertainty. They do not know what is in store for them. There is a 180-day plan, but that's not what the people know. They have no idea about what's in store for them. So it would be absolutely essential to let them know of what future holds for them. What is that they would be able to go stay with the families, and then they would be able to go back to their own villages over a period of time. So that kind of information and involvement of them in planning their movement, I think are more important issues to address, or at least as important as providing food, water and sanitation.
We've been hearing, as you mentioned, about this 180-day plan. Been hearing about demining and plans to resettle these people by the end of the year. So what we've been hearing basically is discourse. But what do you think is needed to make this translate this discourse into positive action, affirmative action?
Well, I think the 180-day commitment which was given by the government is a good start. So when we were kind of planning without a time horizon, that was a good start. And that helps to mobilize a huge amount of government machinery. Every ministry now, if you see, are talking and working towards a 180-day plan. But where it fails, in my opinion, is that now it has to be made more concrete and translated in easy language for the IDPs themselves to understand. For say, if I am a family person living in a tent in one of those camps, I should know what is going to happen to me in 1 month. What does this 180-day hold for me? It is translating that and communicating that in an accessible language. The basic right to information for the displaced, I think would go a great, long way in translating or making the 180-day wish of the government a more concrete reality for the IDPs.
So where do you think this has gone wrong? Why this breakdown in communication?
I think there are a lot of issues at play here. The government is trying to balance the concerns of the IDPs and their constitutional right to freedom of movement with the security concerns of the country at large. And there are also the issue of the INGOs and the international community probably kind of coming and serving. But having moved into confrontational positions at times. Now those need to be addressed so that under the leadership of the government a common plan which could be made a little more concrete rather than public statements, a much more concrete common plan to which everyone could subscribe to and commit ourselves to the IDPs.
So finally, what is your hope for the future of the IDPs in Sri Lanka?
People should be allowed a transitional option to move in with the friends, relatives. That's the Sri Lankan culture. That's Sri Lankan custom to take care of your own family. So they don't look for the government to look after them. They look for the families. So my immediate hope is that people would be allowed to go stay with their friends, families, thereby taking away the necessity for a crisis in our country. The long-term hope, of course, is for them to be resettled in their own village, in their own habitats, with some support to re-establish their lives and livelihoods. And in that sense, it's not only this particular group of IDPs. We would like to look at the IDPs overall. The Muslim IDPs who have been languishing for decades, and so that's what I foresee for the IDP. So that's my hope for the IDPs.